un autore inglese perché anche se sono chiamati la storia italiana se ce l'hai
ce libro quello che ti ha mandato Schädler, se vuoi lo sviluppo je vais laisser Michel Fuchs, le troisième organisateur de cette journée. C'est la session de cette fin de matinée. On va continuer dans cette matérialité toutes les questions qu'elle soulève, aussi bien que les textes.
Alors, effectivement, nous allons montrer encore dans certains détails, mais aussi une vision générale. Et la session de maintenant va être initiée par une spécialiste des questions de ossements, articulants, tous les travaux, différents travaux qu'elle a menés sur les autres vont bénéficier à sa présentation. Il y a aussi le lit funéraire particulièrement, qu'elle a étudié de manière intensive. Je te laisse la parole.
In this paper, I would like to review the subject of the so-called Alexandrian counters, but from another point of view, analyzing the defining archaeological context. First of all, I would like to briefly summarize the main features of this peculiar and problematic object. They are discoid in shape and are made either of bone or ivory. On the obverse side, various scenes are found. On the reverse, numerals in Latin and Greek from 1 to 15 are present. Sometimes, in the middle, an inscription in Greek identifies the subject. For a long time, during the 19th century, these objects were great collector's items. Initially, they were considered to be theatre tickets. But the discovery of an infant burial from Perch in Crimea containing a wooden box with a complete series of counters, numbering from 1 to 15, changed the latter theory, and they are now considered gaming pieces. The Russian historian and archaeologist Mikhail Rostov, at the beginning of the last century, published the find from Perch and proposed these new interpretations. Many years after, since the 70s of the last century, the complex iconography of this particular kind of counters has been carefully analyzed by Elisabeth Alfoldi Rosenbaum, but we do not yet have a complete corpus of the findings. The pieces known by Alfoldi Rosenbaum were about 500, but recent discoveries have increased this number. They were considered to be of Alexandrian origin because the scenes engraved often represented monuments, places of cult, or landscapes with crocodiles and obelisks connected to the city of Alexandria and to the Nile Delta, like, for example, Nicopolis, Tanopos, and Eleusinion. But apart from the aforementioned scenes, other images were found. Gods from the Greco-Roman pantheon and Egyptian pantheon, like, for example, Zeus, Serapis, Isis, Paul the Muses, Horus, Anubis, Hermes Tot, but also heroes, poets, athletes, and portraits of Roman politicians and emperors from the Julio-Claudian dynasty, for instance, Julius Caesar, Rex Antonius, Augustus, Tiberius, Nero, the women Julia and Lydia, and also a member of the late Ptolemaic dynasty, the Cleopatra's brother, probably Ptolemy XIV. The inscription in Greek here is Adelphos Cleopatras. The physiognomic characters do not always correspond to their respective portraits, but the subjects are explicitly defined by inscriptions on the reverse. There are also caricatures, for example of prostitutes, theatre for mass, victory wreaths of athletic competitions, along with a considerable variety of animals, plants, and inanimate objects. The numbers on the reverse do not necessarily correspond to the scene on the obverse, and we find the same subject with different numbers. For instance, in the perch spine, the portrait of Aphrodite is present twice, but linked to different numbers. In some cases, on the obverse, hands with fingers in various positions indicate a specific number, the so-called finger calculus. On the reverse, there are numerals, almost always in Latin. This type, in my opinion, must be considered as a particular group, maybe also with different usages. There are also simpler counters, without images on the obverse, but decorated only with circular groups on the reverse. On the reverse, there are the usual numerals from 1 to 15 in Latin and Greek. These gaming pieces can be dated between around the Caesarian period to the end of the Julio-Claudian dynasty with Nero, the last emperor represented, conventionally between 45 BC and 68 AD, even though some pieces continue to be used for quite a while, maybe until the first half of the 2nd century AD. Alexandrian counters have been discovered throughout the Roman world, along the coast of the eastern Mediterranean, along the northern shores of the Black Sea, in Italy, and as far away off as Central Europe. To tell the truth, we do not really know how the game was played. It is not mentioned in ancient sources, and all interpretations are up to questioning. One of the theories is that they were part of a board game with counters numbered from 1 to 15, even though it is difficult to understand the connection between the numbers and the images. Other interpretations link them to gambling matches with drawing lot so as to obtain one complete series with a number from 1 to 15, or a complete set of counters with similar subject. It is impossible at the moment to understand how the Alexandrian counters were used, but I would like to focus on another aspect, analyzing the context where they were found. There are many examples of unknown provenance in the collection of important museums, but there are also some, although few, found from graves or urban centers that could give some useful information. For instance, the finds from graves, especially infant burials, are very important, and there are also some finds associated with particular objects that deserve attention. I am also working on a distribution map of the findings, and I can present some preliminary data. It is still a work in progress, and I apologize for the counters that I may have forgotten. There are two main groups: counters of unknown provenance. Most of the examples recovered in the past by private collectors are unfortunately without data about the places and context of origin. Exemplary is the case of the important collection of Wilhelm Frohler, formed between the last decades of the 19th century and the first decades of the 20th century, which included many Alexandrian counters, and it is now kept, after the death of the owner in 1925, at the Cabinet des Médailles Bibliothèque Nationale in Paris. It is possible that some of these counters were found in Egypt, but we cannot exclude that some items in this collection were fake. Also, the collection formed by Arthur Schädler, who lived in Rome in the first half of the 19th century, included several counters, probably purchased in the city and its surroundings. Now it is kept at the Schädler Museum in Hanover. Another significant case is that of the Jules Sambon collection, sold in 1911 to the La Scala Theatre Museum in Milan, which included about 20 of these counters. A lot of counters of unknown provenance are now kept in the most important European museums, for example in Paris at the Louvre, in London at the British Museum, in Vienna at the Kunsthistorisches Museum, but further counters are also kept in other museums in Europe and in the United States. places of discovery. In some cases of counters found during the past, only the places of discovery have been recorded, but there are no further data concerning the context of origin. The places of discovery can, however, give an idea of the wide geographical diffusion of the counters. Many counters were found in Egypt. The most important group is kept in Alexandria, the Greco-Roman Museum. Other items from Egypt are in Cairo, Egyptian Museum, and in Athens, Venetian Museum. These counters were found mostly in Alexandria and its surroundings, but also in Damanhur, Oxyrhynchus, Tunis, and generically in the Fayum region. These are counters from Alexandria. And this is one counter found in recent excavation, published by Elizabeth Roziewicz. In the Near East area, several counters were found in Israel, Palestine, in Jerusalem, Caesarea Maritima, and Tel Dor, in Lebanon, in Beirut, in Syria, in Amrik, in Turkey, in Tarsus, and in Pergamum. Counters from Greece were found in Athens, Crete, Rhodes, Corinth, Dion, and more recently in Thessaloniki during excavation in the Agora. Several counters were found along the northern shores of the Black Sea, in Tyras and in Olbia Pontica, and especially in Crimea, in Pantikapaio, modern Kerch, and in Chersonesos. Many counters were found in southern Italy, in Pompeii, Ercolano, Capua, Pozzuoli, Brindisi, Taranto, and near Lecce. This is one counter in the famous This is an example of the few information that we have about this finding in the journal Notizie degli Scavi of the 19th century. There is only the description. You can read nella Reggio Quinta, Insula Quarta, Domus numero 1, a voi una tessera circolare recante da un lato una testa virile, perle, eccetera, eccetera. Solo la descrizione viene riportata. Many counters are kept in the Naples National Museum without information about the properties, but they were probably found in the city in the Vesuvian area. Other counters were found in central Italy, in Roma, and in Bolsena. In northern Italy, in Verona, perhaps in Velleria, in Cremona, in Ozzano dell'Emilia or Platerna, and in Aquileia. The counters now at the Aquileia Archaeological Museum were found before 1915. There is also the simpler type with only circular grooves on the obverse. Other counters were found in Croatia, in Vis-a-Vis, and in Zadar. In southern France, in Fréjus, and probably in the zone La Romaine. In Spain, in Bétulo, Badalona. There are two important counters found also north of the Alps. One in Switzerland, in Vindonissa, already presented this morning by Mrs. Feldman. The other counter was found in Austria, in Lauriacum, Enns. It is interesting to observe that the two counters found north of the Alps have the same subject on the obverse, the altars, and the same inscription, Pomoi, altars, on the reverse. We can see 2 or 3 altars with the numbers 4 delta in Vindonissa and 5 epsilon in Lauriacum. And now I would like to focus on some rare cases of counters coming from documented archaeological context that allow a chronological classification and an eventual analysis of the associated materials. In the analysis, I will present separately the findings from towns and those from graves. During the recent excavation in towns, the discovery of isolated counters is sometimes recorded. These findings are useful for a confirmation of the dating to the late Republic or early imperial period. Here are some examples. This counter with Kronos was found in Forum Iuli, Fréjus, during the excavation in the military camp of Agrippa naval fleet, the camp della flotta d'Agrippa alle Zaviere. All the material found in this site can be dated between 20 BC and 50-70 AD. There were also one counter with circular groups and the numeral in Latin and Greek. One shell-shaped counter, I don't know, another discoid counters with the numbers only in Latin. Another Alexandrian counter with erotic scene was found in Fuchs during the Valnier excavation in a residential area. Italy, Cremona. This counter with the board was found in Cremona during the Piazza Marconi excavation. In this area, in the period between 40 BC and 69 AD, there were 3 wealthy houses, one of them known as the Domus dell'Infeo. After the devastation of Cremona, destroyed by the fire lit by the Vespasian troops during the 69 AD civil war, the city was rebuilt. But one of the biggest obstacles for the reconstruction was the presence of rubble. A rather peculiar technique for clearing up the debris was introduced. A series of rectangular holes were dug, and part of the leftover deposit was used to fill in the holes so the terrain was stabilized. This hole, named Buche Rosse, red holes, contained everyday objects from the houses, dating between 40 BC and 69 AD. Among the finds in one of the Buche Rosse, there was the Alexandrian gaming piece. Cesarea Marittima. The first Alexandrian counter from Cesarea Marittima was found in a layer dating to the year between the 1st century BC and the 1st century AD. The second one, with an hand showing the characteristic position of the figure calculus in a layer dating to the years between the 1st and the 2nd century AD. One counter with only circular grooves and the numerals in Latin and Greek was also found. Crimea, Artesian site. One similar counter was found in the so-called Artesian site near Kerch in Crimea. It was found in a building of the earlier citadel destroyed during the 46-47 AD war between Rome and the Bosporan kingdom. It was in a homogeneous layer of fire among other artifacts, jewelry, beads, and coins. Another counter with only circular grooves and the numerals in Latin and Greek was found in Knossos during the so-called unexplored mansion excavation in a layer dating to Hadrian's age, mid-2nd century AD. Another similar counter with only circular groove and the numerals in Latin and Greek was found in Rome during recent excavation in Corso Italia, Villino Fassi. The counter was in the garden of a rich early imperial building dating to the 1st century AD, together with other game pieces, like glass and bone counters and 5 bone dice. Another similar counter with only circular grooves and the numerals in Latin and Greek was found north of the Alps, also in the Magdalensberg site, a settlement dating to mid-1st century BC, mid-1st century AD. Graves. The first case that I would like to briefly present is the famous discovery in Kerch, ancient Antiquity, that allowed a new interpretation of the items as gaming counters. The discovery was published in 1904 by Mikhail Rostotsev in a paper in Russian and reconsidered in a French paper 1 year later. He reports that in an infant grave with a terracotta vase dating to the 1st-2nd century AD, near the head of the skeleton there was a wooden and bronze box containing a series of items showing the numbers from 1 to 15. The pieces were arranged in pairs with the figured side matching.
Il périmètre dans la tombeau d'enfant, près de la tête du squelette, il y avait une petite boîte de bois avec les 15 rondelles en os placées verticalement 2 par 2. Les sujets figuraient se touchant. Les inscriptions formaient l'encadrement. In this complete series of 15 counters,
there are subjects rather homogeneous. 10 divinities or heroes, 2 portraits, 2 victory wreaths, 1 building. You can see. The number 1 is the portrait of Augustus in Greek Sebastos, number 2 Zeus, number 3 Hermes, 4 the building Elysium, number 5 Heracles, number 6 victory wreaths, Raya, 7 another portrait, Fuchs, number 8 Kronos, number 9 another victory wreath, Papu, number 10 Aphrodite, number 11 Dioscorus, number 12 Castor, number 13 another Aphrodite, number 14 Isis, number 15 Hera. Another grave, Italy, Brundisium, Brindisi. 2 Alexandrian counters were found in Brindisi in the Via dei Cappuccini necropolis, in the cremation grave of the 4th century AD, together with 11 counters decorated only with circular grooves on the obverse and a numeral in Latin Greek on the reverse. The context of this grave established is particularly difficult to interpret. In the sealed pit there was one stone case. Inside there was the glass olla with the ashes and the remains of the funeral pile with the grave boots. The first Alexandrian counter with the numeral 8 Eta. The second one with the and showing the characteristic position of the finger calculus and the numeral 10 only in Latin. 12 simple bone counters, 11 with circular groove, on the reverse numeral in Latin and Greek. 3, 4, 6, 9, 11, 12, 13, so on. 3 are readable or smooth. In the number 4 delta, there is a mistake, probably in Latin. Delta is 4. There is also one shell-shaped piece with numeral 5 only in Latin. I have tried to compose a complete set with the 2 Alexandrian counters in grey, the shell-shaped counter in pink, and the other 12 counters, 3 of them are unreadable on the reverse. It is amazing that there are not double numbers, and we have an almost complete series. But I think that this is only a little game. Anyway, the question is, could the present in the grave of the 2 Alexandrian counters with the other counters of different type indicate that the pieces were used together? Among the grave woods, there were also many other game pieces. 4 bone dice, 12 astragals, many stone and marble counters, and glass counters, black, white, light blue, and murrina. And also 3 bone balls with numerals in Greek and Latin. Near the grave, but in a later and disturbed layer, there was also one stone slab with tabule lusori engraved on both sides. 7 Alexandrian counters were found in Yader, Zadar. They were discovered in 1928 in a grave at Casali Maggiori, Stanoni. In the same grave there were 1 bone dice, 3 glass bolsonaries, and 2 bronze striges. On the obverse, they all have a representation of Eros, Cupid, in various positions. 1 sitting golden grapes in one hand and apples or pears in the other hand, with the numeral 1 alpha on the reverse. 1 sitting golden mask with the numeral 7 zeta on the reverse. 1 with a clock and holding a wreath with the numeral 9 theta on the reverse. 1 sitting and playing the lyre with the numeral 11 iota alpha on the reverse. 1 sitting holding a syrinx and the reverse without inscription. This is a drawing. hand bind on the back, and the reverse without inscription. One without wings, sitting holding probably an hourglass, and the reverse without inscription. It is important to observe that in this group there are only variants of the same subject. The last grave that I would like to present is the infant cremation burial found in Ludi, near Lecce, with a complete series of 15 counters, with circular groove on the obverse and with numerals from 1 to 15 on the reverse. We have information about the discovery in the journal Notizie degli Scavi of the 19th century. The grave was found in Rugge, Fondo Viola. It was a chamber tomb. In the bottom there was a brick. Under the brick there was the funerary terracotta vase. Inside there were the burned bones of a child and the 15 bone counters. David tolto infatti questo mattone, si vide che copriva un vaso fittile entro cui erano frammenti di ossa bruciate di un fanciullo e 15 dischi di osso conservatissimi lavorati al tornio. Da un lato una piccola prominenza nel centro, hanno aspetto di piccole borchie. Dall'altro hanno superficie perfettamente liscia, su cui porta ciascuno una lettera greca e un numero romano, i quali segni riuniti compongono una serie completa dei numeri da 1 a 15. The series was completed. It was possible to read all the inscription on the reverse. Nowadays, 3 of these counters are lost. I would like to conclude with some questions following the analysis of the findings. The first question: what is the relationship between the true Alexandrian counters with images and the series of counters without images and decorated only with circular grooves on the obverse and with the same Latin Greek numeral on the reverse? In the Brindisi grave, the two kinds of counter were found together, but there are also other contexts where both types are present. The question is, were they used together? The second question. In 1975, Elisabeth Alfoni Rosenbaum wrote, "We may assume, I think, that there were series of 15 counters, each for every subject shown on the obverse. In this case, the objective of the game may have been to assemble certain combination of counters, for example, 15 counters with Zeus or Athena, or all divinities with number 1 and so forth. I don't know at all if this interpretation could be right, and in my opinion the problem for the moment cannot be solved. But the question is if there were a series of 15 counters with similar subject on the obverse, for example 15 God or 15 Alexandrian buildings. And we can observe that in the two series found in archaeological context, there are rather homogeneous objects. In the Kirch grave, in the series of 15 counters, there are 10 divinities. In the Zadar grave, 7 counters with 7 cupids in various positions. Unfortunately, at present, there are few data available. And I think that only future findings will shed some light on the interpretation of these counters. Your comments and criticism will be very appreciated. To my thanks, I wish to add an appeal. I will be grateful for any information about the location of further bone counters of the kind described here. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you to Chiara Bianchi for this rich presentation of calculi and figurative calculi. I think it's better that we have the question after the second presentation about calculi. But if you have a special question about the presentation, it's the time for this. Very special question about this. If this is not the case, we have the discussion after the second presentation.
introduction, but just to say that we are very proud to have our first ERC project here represented.
Hi, so my name is Claire Rowan, and I'm leading another ERC project on tokens, tesserae, broadly defined. And so I'm very, very thankful to Véronique for inviting me to come. We finally managed to sort of make our schedules align. So it's a much broader project, but what I'm going to present today is a particular subset of tokens that have been thought to be gaming pieces. My research sort of into this is sort of suggesting that perhaps they're not. But I'm by no means an expert in ancient gaming, and when I began the project, I went to sort of find books on the topic, and as Véronique pointed out, there's not so many as it turns out, so I'm actually very grateful that the ERC has also funded her. Basically what the series of tokens that I want to talk about today are a series of bronze and orichalcum tesserae, although I have to say that the word tesserae for these objects is entirely a modern application. We don't think they're called that in the Roman world, and it actually makes it extremely difficult to find these things in museum online catalogues, because when you type in tesserae, of course, what you get is 10,000 pieces of mosaic that you have to sort through. There's a particular series of tokens that have a variety of sexual scenes on them, and there's more than I have chosen here. And again, in modern scholarship, they're called spintriae. This is, again, entirely an invented phrase that was taken from Suetonius, in fact, when Tiberius escapes to Capri and takes some young boys with him, and he got to all sorts of, apparently according to Suetonius, sexual activity, but it's entirely, again, a modern word that we use for them. So there's a variety of sexual scenes on one side and a variety of numbers on the other, and the numbers in Latin only range from number 1 to 16. Occasionally there is an A before the number, which you can see here. And there's been great discussions as to what this A means, perhaps asses, but I mean, we really don't know. Buttrey, who's a musicist, did a dye study of these objects, and for those who aren't musicists, a dye study is when you sort of study each piece and try and figure out if they're made from the same stamp, or how many stamps were used to make them. And he realized that actually this series with the sexual scenes is actually connected to a series of bronze and orichalcum tokens that have images of the emperor on them. I've put one example up which shows the Emperor Augustus with the legend fell, so probably Fidicateur, best wishes, beneath the bust. But there the broad variety of Julio-Claudian emperors and broader members of the Julio-Claudian family. From what I can tell, these objects haven't really been studied at all by scholars of gaming. They've largely been studied by numismatists, who look at them and say, well, we don't actually know what these are. They must be gaming pieces, and sort of move on like this, which is not entirely the reasoning that one would like. And I think this has come out of the idea. So Rostovtsev, who studied also the bone gaming pieces, was one of the first scholars sort of to begin looking at tokens more broadly. And he sort of said, well, they have numbers, these ivory things have numbers, so yeah, there must be a form of game that we don't know anything about. So yeah, the evidence is not great. And as I hope to sort of demonstrate, I think they're actually far, far, far rarer than gaming pieces, even the ivory gaming pieces that here are represented. And I think this indicates that they're not, in fact, gaming pieces. And I just put this in as sort of an example to give you a broader sort of idea of this type of images that are shown. I love teaching this to my students. They come alive, and I like to study these. So yeah, as Chiara just presented, the idea that these gaming pieces are based largely on the ivory and bone pieces that I think, Chiara just presented earlier, and so I'm not going to present it again. I think the fine context, do suggest that they were used as gaming pieces. I've just brought along two pieces from the British Museum. The top one, because it shows Nero as hideous, which is quite interesting. And I brought along a shell piece for the number 6. This piece was found, according to the British Museum archive, at Putzwally. What I find actually quite fascinating is that, in terms of the ivory and bone pieces, that you're actually playing with portraits of the emperor, which is something that has blown my mind, that you could sit there and just play the portrait of Augustus or a portrait of Nero. And it's sort of a very interesting way that the imperial image was used. I think one that we should think more about. Maybe someone told me this is true. Someone told me that when chess was introduced perhaps to China or a particular country, they had to rename the king piece, because you couldn't have a piece called king and have it sort of just plain with it. It was considered too offensive. So from Chiara's publication of the pieces in Milan, they do also carry sexual scenes on them, and this is Chiara's photo. I've just plundered for my own use. So there are some similarities between the objects in that they both carry numbers, although these bronze objects don't carry Greek numbers, although, as evidenced by the shell piece, the ivory pieces don't necessarily need to. And they do have some overlap in the imagery, but I think this is where the comparison has to end. What I sort of began to wonder is, and I haven't looked at nearly the same amount of pieces as Chiara has, is to what extent we can figure out whether they were used as gaming pieces from the wear on the objects. So this is a piece from the British Museum, the legend in Greek Tinas, and you can see on the other side it's quite scratched. So it's been sort of, I would presume, used on a board or something like that. So the idea that we could begin to study the use wear of these objects. They don't all show this type of wear, that's for sure, but the spintriae, the bronze pieces, certainly don't. And my theory is if you're going to move something around on a board, say, that, one would imagine there would be some wear use on at least some of the pieces. It's hard to tell from the photos as well, but the bronze tesserae or spintriae are struck on both sides and they do look like coins, so they have relief on both sides. Whereas these pieces and the ivory Alexandrian pieces are flat on one side and the inscriptions are incised and the other side is sort of more rounded, so you get almost like a little semi-circle type of shape, which again I think facilitates the idea of moving them around a board, and the bronze pieces less so. It's also worth pointing out, I think, and the relevance of this will become apparent in a minute, that the gaming pieces I've been looking at are all made from extremely durable materials. So we've got bone, we have pottery, we have glass. These are hard-wearing objects, obviously meant to survive being played with. And there's a whole series, as I'll demonstrate, of tokens that are clearly connected to these bronze series that are made of lead. And I think lead is just completely unsuitable material for a gaming piece because it's just too soft and it wears too easily. One of the reasons that, or one of the pieces of evidence that has been cited that these objects are used in gaming is this piece that was initially published by Cohen in his 19th century catalogue of Roman coins. There's a whole section. He got to the end, he's like, and these other objects. And on one side we have a female bust with the letter CS. I mean, we don't know what this stands for, but the suggestion is Caput Sortus, a female goddess who presides over games of chance. I mean, we can all think, oh, well, it could be anything. On the other side, we have 4 knuckle bones with the Latin legend, qui ludit aram det quod satis sit. So whoever wants to play, presumably knuckle bones, this instance, should give a sufficient pledge, Aaron. This piece is in bronze, and I think in Paris, although I haven't actually been to Paris as part of my research yet. And I've been looking at texts for parallels for this phrase, and I can't find any. That sort of, you know, you can find Aaron used and Antiquity used, but this particular phrase, never. The whole thing becomes slightly more complicated when we consider this other piece that was allegedly found in Tour-de-Peilz and is lead. And the only evidence we have for this is that it was part of the collection in Tour-de-Peilz and mentioned in the Revue Archéologique in 1870, much like Chiara's publication. I have one line, and it was said to come from around Tour-de-Peilz. And so how these two pieces relate, I don't know. The lead piece, certainly, I don't think we could ever find again. So it's in bronze and lead. So there's clearly then some reference to gaming going on here. The second piece of evidence that connects these things to gaming is a bronze token, which show two boys, perhaps, or men, playing at a board game, and one has his hand raised, and you can't see it on this particular piece, but at the top, so along here, is the legend Mora. Now, before you get excited, M-O-R-A, only one R. And numismatists who don't know that much about gaming say, oh, it's the game of Mora, Walla. We can all retire. But as Véronique pointed out to me, Mora is a finger game, not played with a board, so this is not what is going on here. And it's spelled with two R's. But you can see the connection of this piece to the pieces I showed earlier, that there is a number 6. It's made of bronze, it's about the same size as the other pieces. And what I would suggest actually is that M-O-R-A, Mora, also means to pause or wait. So maybe it's someone crying out, wait, you know, on this token. But again, so what is going on here? In fact, we can connect this piece to the Spinteri series more broadly. When preparing this paper, I found a dining, which was very exciting. So in the Ashmolean Museum, I should have said that the Spinteri carry numbers, but also they carry the legend, they can also carry the legend org. And you can see that here. So this is Augustus, and the legend org within a wreath. And the same die that was used to strike this piece also struck this piece. So we can connect them to Mora gaming series or type, basically to the Julio-Claudian period. Again, there's nice parallels with what's happening with the ivory counters. And you can see the Mora more clearly here. So it's clearly part of this broader series. And on this specimen, which is much nicer, you can see actually there's some sort of decorative architectural motif behind, which might be a door or a cupboard, someone has suggested. But it suggests actually that the game is being played indoors, which I think is very interesting in lieu of what Ulrich was saying earlier about games normally being played in public spaces. And this matches with the sexual scenes that I showed earlier, which often show drapery and couches and sort of domestic artifacts sort of around the scene. I would be very happy to hear what any of the experts in the audience might think about what actually is going on in this scene and what game is being played. So if this is clearly part of this broader bronze Julio-Claudian set of tokens, I think we need to begin to think about why this particular sort of scene is being represented and what else is represented on these objects. When we begin to look at the series more broadly, so mainly the study has been of the sexual scenes. It's proven very popular, and everything else has been ignored. But when you begin to look at what's actually shown on these pieces, you get a sense of fun. There's no other word to say it, no other way to say it. So in the top left, we have basically a monkey in a triumphal chariot being crowned by another monkey on a camel. It's a scene of the absurd and perhaps a scene of satire, of triumph. In the top right, we have some female flute players. And there is a legend there, which I think everyone who's ever looked at these pieces has tried to read, and I've tried to read, but I can't make it out. It's Theo, Fo, and then a bit garbled, and then by, and then a bit garbled. And then we have, here in the middle, a man swinging and two people pulling it up. I mean, he's swinging back and forth. And Alexei Kuntler, who's done a good study of these, has suggested that here in the background we have the crane, maybe. I think this might be connected perhaps to Venationes. There's a scene of some animal fights where people are being winched up into baskets. But he's clearly having a good time, this guy. As I mentioned, there are broader portraits of the Julio-Claudian family, and this is Drusus, shown in a very heroic pose. We have references to chariot races and other festival activities. So here, victory in a quadriga with orb on the other side. There's also gods shown, this one Dionysus with number 14 on the other side. As I mentioned before, what no one has realized is that these same scenes and these objects are also connected to an entire series of lead tokens that no one has studied since Rostovtsev in 1903. So in the Harvard Art Museums, this is a clear connecting piece. It's hard to, the lead does not survive very well. You can sort of see there's a woman laying down here and there's a guy penetrating her from behind. And we have A1 here, which connects this idea of the A and the numbers on the bronze tokens. And if you remember the piece I showed right at the beginning, which had Augustus and fell for ligateur beneath, this is clearly sort of a comparative piece for Hadrian. So had orb, Hadrianus, Augustus, Pata Patra, and then F for ligateur. There's also a lead token that has a sexual scene on one side and a number on the other, but I don't have a photo of that yet. It's in Hanover. We also have portraits on one side and numbers on the other. This is from the Warwick Teaching Collection, which again has parallels to what's going on with the bronze. On bronze and lead tokens, we get like exclamations, cries, which I think begin to indicate to us the context in which these objects are being used. So this piece is a bronze piece, and you can see the legend Yo-Yo Triumph. So this is the shout that was chanted during Roman imperial triumphs, Yo-Yo Triumphe, which apparently the soldiers all chanted as they marched through the streets of Rome. And we have a laurel branch, obvious sign of victory. And these two, it says the horseshoes, are actually the armilla, the bands that are given to soldiers who sort of distinguish themselves, and the torque, which again was given to soldiers as a military honour. On this lead piece, we have a branch, a palm branch, and a wreath. And you can sort of see here, Yo Sat. And this is the chant that was the Saturnalia chant, Yo Yo Saturnalia. And there's also a piece in the British Museum, and I'm waiting on the photos from them, which has on one side Yo Sat, and on the other side the number 4. So clearly these numbered series are connected to festivals. In this last example, we have GPRF, so the Genio Populi Romani, Felicateur, and a palm branch on the other side. And I wondered the piece that has the word Mora on it. This is again an exclamation. And I think if we can see it then in this context, that it's an exclamation that these objects sort of shout out sorts of scenes. There is a remarkable series that we know who made them. There's a remarkable series in the name of Gaius Matrius, whose title is the Magister Juventutis. So a magistrate responsible for the Juvenes, sort of an organisation mainly found in Italy, sort of training youth of Roman Italy. And you can see again parallel, so there's great debate as to who is shown here. I would say it's Gaius Matrius, but musicians would gasp and fall off their chairs at the very word. But we have again numbers within wreath, and he releases a series of numbers. And then there's this remarkable piece, this is the one from the Ashmolean, where we have the same sort of obverse. On the reverse, we have what I think must be a basilica. And there's a number in size in the exo, and different pieces have different numbers incised. So other specimens have the number 9 or the number 4. So they're clearly striking these pieces and then going and incising different numbers. And in addition to the numbers I've shown here, there's also the number 11 and 12 is known. And again, to underline the connection with the lead tokens, it's a really bad photo, I'm showing the lead, which again has a portrait of a man and another sort of magister of the youth. The legend is P. Petri Sabi, so Publius Petronius Sabinus. And on the other side, you can sort of see here mag, youth, and the number 9. So again, another magister of the Juvenes or Juventutus, and the number 9. So these objects are clearly being used in the same context. And you either choose to have bronze or arocalcum or lead, I would say, depending on what you could afford and how posh you wanted your particular event to be. And I think we are beginning to sort of think that these are associated with events. Further lead tokens, I started gathering all the lead tokens with numbers and I ran out of time. There's a lot. And I was hoping it would reveal some sort of common theme, but it does not. So these are just a few examples. So we have gods, Doyen in this case is number 4. We have a nonsense inscription, from what I can tell, around the prow. The number 4 within a wreath. This is one that Rostovtsev said was the number 1, but I'm not quite sure about that. This is the only image we have of it. A lot of these were excavated in Rome, and they currently can't find where they are. We've been hunting for a year. We found 8 of the 5,000. So we can see Vowels Saturnalia, so again a Saturnalian context. This one is a horse, and the number 10. So it is actually sort of quite a broad range. And I think the mention of the Saturnalia in several pieces is quite interesting, because of course it's during the Saturnalia that people could gamble while playing games with dice and stuff. And if you read sort of accounts like Alice Gellius in the Attic Nights, you know, he hangs around Athens playing games and gambling. And so yeah, I wondered to what extent these might be gambling chips. And I did put the information in because I didn't think it was relevant, but I was speaking to Ulrich yesterday. He said, oh no, we do lottos and game and casino stuff as well. The suggestion is too that perhaps they're also being used in lottos or in distributions. So there's a whole series of lead tokens from Ephesus that Christina Kuhn is studying. I think she's pretty convincingly demonstrated that they are associated with the lottos, particularly the lottos mentioned in the Salutaris inscription. So every year you have to give out food and drink, only to a limited number of people. And so how do you do this? You have a lotto. There's also evidence for this in the Roman world, although the Latin word for these objects is complex. In Greek it's quite clear that they're called symbolo. And we have from Cassius Dio several instances of the idea of these being sort of used almost as lottery pieces. And Fortuna, I should point out, is quite a common representation. So Dio in book 49:43-4 talks about Agrippa as an idol and says that he hurled Symbolo, raining down on the heads of the people which they could scramble for, and then redeem these Symbola for clothes or money or other objects. And Marshall sort of also talks about this in Epistle 8:78. And again, this is a particular event, and he talks about how in sudden showers, the lasciva nomismata, which is the heavily debated phrase, so the playful, the wanton tokens, coin-like objects came showering down. So we have this vision of people just hurling these things into the air, and a mad scramble taking place. And Seneca sort of noted that at this point of the games, the smart man leaves the amphitheatre, because you don't want to be involved in the ruckus that takes place. I don't want to suggest that there's one single use for all these objects. I think there's probably numerous uses, but in terms of lotteries and distribution, I think that perhaps they did play a role. I mentioned before that the finds are really, really, really rare, and they appear to be completely different to the way that actually known gaming pieces are found. So these are just the bronze and Arapalpa ones. I mean, and I should point out they're all single finds by themselves. So unlike the ivory pieces, they're never found together as a set, ever. Which I think, again, indicates they're not actually being used as gaming pieces. So we've got stray finds in the tomb. There was one found in a Roman villa at Nemi. Stray finds along the frontiers. Yeah, they're all just sort of single finds. The lead pieces are found together in rivers as votive offerings, in bathhouses and in shops. And I should say the lead pieces, we actually also find the moulds that are being used to cast them. And it's clear that it's a distributed private production. The moulds are being used and they're just abandoned in shops, in theatres, in bathhouses. And it's completely spread throughout Rome and Ostia. I will point out that the lead pieces I'm showing appear to be concentrated in central Italy. Although much like the gaming pieces, they're not very well published, so perhaps history will change, but this is what I'm finding currently. I thought, oh, well, you know, they are clearly being pierced to be reused, and the one piece that was found in the potter's workshop in France, the suggestion was maybe it was being used as a stamp, because it was such a lovely, sexy design, but they haven't found any pots that match it, so perhaps not. I thought of the piece and then being used as mementos, perhaps of particular life events or particular sort of festivals. And maybe this is also a way to separate them from the Alexandrian counters. But the Alexandrian gaming counters, surprisingly, are also pierced, some specimens. And there was a few in Chiara's talk, and this one is from Bolsena, which is a 19th century find. And I think that's also interesting that people would actually convert a gaming piece into sort of a jewelry or memento. Okay, thank you. I thought I had half an hour. So the question is, why represent games? And I think it is this idea of being sort of, perhaps, it's an emotion that perhaps they're trying to represent. So why are these games represented in the spin triad? I think it is trying to evoke a sense of joy, a sense of fun. And I can talk about this later. Yeah, so I think I enjoyed the view, and if you can gamble or play games during a festival, maybe this is shown on festival tokens alongside other events. Yeah, so I will leave it there if I run out of time. Thank you.
Thank you to Rowan, and we have seen that you must have the sense of the numismatic and anthropology to have good answer and question. And now we have time for questions. Chiara Bianchi of Rowan, Claire Rowan.
Well, just an anecdote to start with. I think it's so important that all of you get your knowledge also known to a wide audience. Why I tell this? Well, in April there was a conference for teachers of classics in Flanders, in Ghent actually, where one speaker propagated the view that ancient society was so open about sex and showed all these tests, and I said, these were coins, and they played with this, and can you imagine that? And everybody believed it. Yeah. So this was a serious conference for training for teachers afterwards, so it's good that people know that these are different things. And then, besides the anecdote, I was wondering the Mora thing. Mm-hmm. Of course, you're aware that all over Pompeii and everywhere you have that pun or play on words, which is Amor, Roma, Armo, Mora. It comes up every time again. So you can even make
Square.
Yeah, squares.
Yeah.
These things. So this
Okay.
could be a motif somewhere referring to that. I don't know.
Yeah, I think there is. I haven't presented those ones, but there is definitely some elite wordplay business.
It's everywhere. You have like books like Amor, and these things.
Yeah.
It's a very popular play on words. Might be, I'm not sure, but
Yeah, no, it's good. Yeah, and I should say the speechio. It's also like the prevailing view, based on no evidence whatsoever, is that they used to pay prostitutes in brothels because you couldn't carry a coin carrying the portrait of the emperor into a brothel. But not one has been found in a brothel, I will point out. And interestingly, none from Pompeii, as far as I can tell. It's a weird gap in the evidence.
Posso dire una cosa? Riguardo alla presenza di queste scene erotiche sulle pedine alessandrine, che è un altro problema che mi sono posta. Noi le abbiamo trovate in molte tombe infantili, no, non le scene erotiche, però ci sono anche delle pedine alessandrine con scene erotiche, quindi adesso magari noi abbiamo una mentalità diversa, ma era un gioco per bambini, cioè un gioco praticato dai bambini, dai ragazzi e dagli adulti. Per esempio questo fatto che ci sono anche queste scene diverse.
My question would be related. Do you know the age of the children?
No,
roughly or roughly?
No, because all is the church grave, 19th, the beginning of the last century, only infant burial. And the second one, in near Lecce, again, the bones of a child. So,
if the bones are still there, which one do you have a look?
300 are lost, maybe the bones are...
And just a related question, has any traceology been made in the counters, in the bone counters, to see how much they were used? You know, there are traces of use and objects that can be detected.
Sorry, no, but maybe in the future, if I can, the possibility to handle only the counters of the Sambon collection now, and I will try to possible.
I think it would be interesting because in the British Museum, some pieces are clearly worn and some pieces are clearly pristine. And I wonder particularly the ones in tubes, whether they're actually used or whether they're just donated. Yeah.
Il y avait une autre question? Oui.
Yeah, thank you very much for these interesting papers. First of all, when I know that in literature, of course, very often they are called gaming counters or gaming pieces. Then I would immediately ask, what does gaming mean in this context? Because many people immediately think of a board game, and they think that these are pawns or counters to play nine-man's Morris or something like that. But of course, this makes no sense. You don't need numbers on the back of the nine-man's Morris piece. This makes no sense. But there are all kinds of games, of course, not only board games. There are tossing games, and there could be kind of lotteries or things like that. So there are a lot of different possibilities. I don't believe in this theory that there are series of 1 to 15 and things like that, because I think that, as a matter of fact, the context, they don't confirm this theory. There are too many single pieces that are found. And when it was the purpose to get series or having a series, somebody would have tried to collect the complete series, and then should be one of these series around. This is not the case. There are too many single pieces. So this is something which speaks against also the theory that it's gaming counters for a board game.
Zana grave with the 7 counter with 7 cupids in different positions.
Yes,
This is strange.
But normally gaming, so pawns never walk alone.
But it is in the same grave. The strange is
and just another small remark. We touched this a little bit yesterday. It's about objects in the context of children's context. We should not forget that, I don't know which talk it was, where we touched a little bit this subject. You may not forget that children tend to collect all kinds of objects and to keep them as a treasure. So if you find such a token in a children's grave, this does not mean, as I think, that they have something to do with the game, the children's play. But children, they collect pebbles because they are beautiful, or precious stones, or all kinds of objects, and keep them very often as a treasure. And for example, this might also be a reason why such a piece may find its way into a children's grave, because it is. And then these are objects that are not necessarily toys. You do not necessarily play with it, but you keep them. And this is what children do since centuries, all over the planet.
I have seen another question. Oui.
Moi j'avais une question, Clara. En français, ça va? Moi je réfléchissais justement par rapport à ces séries, parce que je me demande, on a par rapport à des monnaies justement, un petit peu, je pense qu'on est plus dans le discours finalement, des images par rapport aux défunts. Parce que ces scènes, comme justement les Cupidons, on les retrouve des fois dans des tombes, sous des formes diverses. Ça peut être des boîtes, aussi comme ça peut être des pixies qui ont des scènes de ce type-là, ou des scènes érotiques, en fait c'est des figures emblématiques qui reviennent tout le temps. Je me demande justement si on ne ferait pas mieux, au lieu de considérer qu'il s'agit de jeux, enfin de pièces de jeu au sens strict du terme, de réfléchir à un discours qui se rapporte au défunt, et peut-être à quelque chose qu'on lui augure, mais en tous les cas, j'avais réfléchi un petit peu par rapport aux monnaies justement, où on a un petit peu on a exactement le même cas de figure, où des fois aussi les colliers d'amulettes sont formés de différentes pièces qui se réfèrent à des choses plutôt au défunt, à son statut social, ou à quelque chose qu'on espère pour lui.
Oui.
Oui, j'ai publié des monnaies percées, trouvées à Rouen dans des tombes d'enfants, et qui avaient justement un choix d'images en rapport avec la jeunesse. C'était pas anodin le choix des revers qui étaient mis sur ces pièces de monnaie, percées et enfilées sur une tige de bronze et trouvées dans des sarcophages en plomb du 2e ou 3e siècle à Rouen. Donc il y avait un rapport pour les monnaies. Pour les commentaires, je ne sais pas. Je ne me prononce pas.
The Cupid series, the one without the wings and holding something, I thought maybe it was Aphrodite holding a mirror. It looked as if she had little breasts and it's a known type. Just a suggestion, maybe not.
Dans le sens de la remarque qui a été faite tout à l'heure, je me suis posé la question des portraits, en particulier des portraits féminins qui sont présents sur les jetons, que ce soit les jetons en os. Est-ce qu'il faut véritablement faire des portraits de femmes inconnues, ou est-ce que ça n'est pas précisément un discours lié aux femmes impériales à ce moment-là, avec tout ce que cela veut dire en relation avec les portraits impériaux qui eux aussi figurent sur la verre des jetons?
It is not a portrait, a real portrait, but on the reverse side there are descriptions Greek, Livia, Julia, and archetype, Darius, Sebastopol, Augustus, Nero. The identification is made by description on the reverse. But the portrait is not a real portrait, as you see. You can find Nero representing a strange way, not the classical representation.
Et je pense aussi aux portraits que vous avez montrés sur les pièces en bronze qui n'ont pas de détermination particulière, mais qui correspondent effectivement à une période très impériale.
Yeah, I mean, with the thing with women, it's quite difficult because it can also just be like a private portrait. I mean, without a name, it's very difficult. Actually. I mean, there are tokens that of pipe, like the gays and traits and these attorneys, private portraits, and could it be? It's hard to figure out if it's meant to be an empress or a member of the imperial family or some other woman who sponsors it. I mean, there are names like Julia and Fulvia, but especially Julia, I don't know if it's a name or a gens. Yeah.
Est-ce qu'il y a d'autres questions ou remarques sur le sujet? Si ce n'est pas le cas, bien, je vous remercie. Nous allons passer à la dernière présentation de la session de ce matin avec Charles Doyen qui va prolonger ses réflexions sur les étalons d'argent, de bronze, monétaire et bois. Je vous laisse la parole.
Thank you very much for this presentation. So I thought it could be more convenient if I give the paper in English. Okay. So as everyone, I want to thank Véronique for inviting me and kindly suggesting to study this wonderful topic. Quite difficult, I must say, but it's still a work in progress, and I'm really glad to be here to your comment and suggestions. Thanks. So maybe let's start from the beginning. As you may know, as you probably know, the talus or the astragalus is actually the ankle bone part of the talus. Every mammal actually has two talons, and you can, if you are, if you get bored during my proposal, please feel free to play with the astragaly in the third course. So two symmetric talons, but the most common astragaly or knuckle bones come from sheep or goats. So it's a really complex and polysemous artifact. From the Neolithic period onwards, it's used as an offering in sanctuaries or in a funerary context. The two most famous examples are probably the Corinthian cave in the Parnassus, where about 23,000 astragaly were brought to light, and also the necropolis of Locus, where about 9,000 astragaly were found, of course, in a funerary context. So we are talking about both astragaly, but also astragaly made of metal, especially lead and bronze, or of other material, including stone and glass. Because of its shape, the astragalus can be used as a dice, a four-sided dice, and when you throw it, you can one of the four possible sides, and each side has a specific value according to literary evidence. So the two biggest sides are 3 and 4, and the two smallest ones are 1 and 6. So the three ones still. Therefore, the astragaly can be used in a game context, of course, as knuckle bones, either by children or adults, by the way, but also in a divination context, what is called astragalomancy. Literary and iconographic sources also attest the use of astragaly in a love context. The best trope, so it's with 4 astragaly, 1 of each side, is called the Venus trope. And we see that the young heroes also likes to play with astragali. And this kind of astragali, of course, can also become, at one stage, different. Finally, amongst other uses, metal astragali can be weights. All these weights can also, at one stage, become offering. So I will try to explore with you how and why these bones are so in a way connected to metrology. So I'd like to start with a specific artifact where bone and metal are mixed together. We have several examples already for the Bronze Age, for instance in Russian Garrett, also in Bogasberg, in Anshar, of astragali that were pierced and carved and filled with metal, especially with lead. During the historical period on the Athenian Agora, on the right. Another example in the National Museum of Warsaw, and we have also one example in the Corinthian cave. You can see that these astrolabe were really carved and also here pierced, and this was used to fill it with lead. We have other examples with something more simple. So another example at Saudi, for instance, Delos, Guinea, Fuchs, Curry, and Taranto, etc., etc. On the bottom right, we have one very interesting artifact, which is a weight actually. It's a typical leaf-shaped weight that probably comes from Roman Asia Minor, and you can see that a leather astragalus was used to cast the weight. So first they cut the astragalus and then they pour lead into the mold. And we have basically the same kind of artifact in a funerary context in Locus. So it's in a 5th century tomb, a bone tomb, I think, where about 1,000 real bone astragali were found, but also 14 leather astragali mixed with that were cast, let's say, in square or disc lead shape. So 12 of them are on this picture, and usually scholars consider these are not weights, but the one before on the bottom right, this portion, I think. Second category, the total metal astragali. And we will start with the most complicated, the one without any inscription or symbols. So there are many of them all around the Mediterranean area. In many cases, we don't have an archaeological evidence, archaeological context, and of course, a comprehensive study of the artifacts is still lacking. So for this paper, I tried to gather about 50 metal astragali, and as you can see, many of them really look like real bones. So it's quite probable that they were cast into a print of a real bone. On the following chart, you can see that there is a peak. So this is the mass from 0 to 500 grams, and this is the length of the object. So you can see that there is a peak between 2 centimeters and let's say 5 centimeters, which is the real size of an astragali. For a ship astragalus, it's about 3 centimeters long. The big ones you've seen and you are playing with are cattle astragali, and this one could measure up to 7 or 8 centimeters. So, of course, for the little ones, it's almost impossible to decide if they were darks, offerings, weights, or something else. For the biggest ones, let's say above 5 centimeters and above 150 grams, the hypothesis of weights could be considered more seriously, especially if there is an evidence for sets of astragally that we could find together, of course, and that would be organized into metric scale, let's say, for instance, 1, 2, 4, 8, or 1, 3, 6, 12. It's much more easier, of course, if the astragally were an inscription, and that's my third category. And I will start with what is probably the biggest astragalus we know. It's a huge bronze astragalus. So you can see it measures 37 centimeters long, and it weighs 93.7 kilograms. So it was excavated in Suze, but it was actually cast in Lyon during the 6th century BCE. We know the name of the metal worker. It's on the inscription, a calculated called Pasicles of Dimenes. So Pasicles, son of Dimenes, was the artist, let's say, that who produced this artifact. Actually, these artifacts from the period, because the inscription uses the Real Tablet Agriata, so probably this astragally is part of the biggest set. Maybe 2 astragally, 1 left and 1 right, that were offered together, dedicated together to Apollo Demetrius. So this astragalus was transferred to Caesar when Darius sacked and burned the temple of Apollo Demetrius in 1494 BCE. Some scholars have suggested that these astragalus could be a weight, but actually we don't have any positive evidence for such a suggestion. What is for sure is that this astragalus was intended first to be an offering, and we have no proof that it was ever used as a weight or even was similar to a real weight. But its huge mass is of course intentional, and it represents the value of the object. So we could say that the astragalus is at least a standard of value, if not a standard of weight. We have other examples of such astragally, especially in Olympia. So these are 5th century astragally from Olympia during the German explanations, and these ones are usually considered as weights. First, because they are standardized on the Attic magnet, and secondly, because some of them were an inscription, for instance, here, T for tetatron, 1/4, and here, Ami for Ami-9, half a mile. But I must stress that these astragally are also offerings above all, because all these astragally, and it's the same case for all the so-called weights of Olympia, they were the inscription deals belonging to Zeus. Plus, all the weights from Olympia are made of bronze, although in the Greek world they usually prefer lead for producing weight because it's much cheaper and easier. It's more cheaper, it's cheaper to me, and easier to get as well. So again, I would say first, these objects are standard of value, and secondly maybe standards of weight. Other examples from Tyre, you can see a nice set of 5 astragally with angles, and a big one inscription in Greek, both in Greek and in Phoenician. this case is very interesting because you can see we have countermarks here with the club and the alpha probably is a countermark as well, but I should see with the object which is in the Geneva Museum. So we have proof here that these objects were checked after casting and probably by a magistrate. So this is a strong indication that these objects were actually used as weights. So again, bronze Australian. And we have also other objects, either with symbols or two letters, but since more of them are coming from the Antiquity trade, we don't have any colors and we don't know so much. For the Roman period, we have this nice set of really big astragales that also comes from the Antiquity trade, but was recently acquired by the Permanent Museum. And the three astragales have an inscription here with both Roman and Greek letters, and the inscriptions that we give in the denomination. So we have 100 libras there, 75, and 50 libras. We also have textual epigraphical evidence for such a practice of producing weights, astragalus-shaped weights during the Roman times. This is an inscription from the Aegean, this is from the reign of Trajan or Adrian. So I will review Papias Memmius Agathocles, who was an Agrarianus, dedicated from its own sources, probably, but it's not for sure. So he dedicated the balances and the bronze weights that are stored in it. So what kind of weights? The first one is a bow and deal, so something that represents probably a bow and deal, and weighing 50 libras, an atalanta of 25 libras, an astragalon of probably 1 libra, another astragalus of 1 libra, 9 rupias, the third astragalus of 2 libras, the fourth astragalus of 4 libras, an euros, etc. So, very interestingly, we can see that we have in this set of weights, of 7 weights, at least 4 astragali, and that the astragalus is used for the most common denomination in the Roman system, which is the libra. So now I jump to my third category, which are not astragalus-shaped weights, but the astragalus used as a weight symbol. And the most impressive corpus, of course, is the corpus of Athens. As you may know, usually Greek cities use a parasemon, a symbol, on their coinage and other weights, but Athens here is an exception because Athens uses single symbols for each denomination. And the astragalus is used for the main important denomination of the system, which is the starter, from the late 6th or early 5th century BC until the 1st century BC. So starter weighs 2 minus actually, and with the denomination as well. Starter here, for instance, and then more here for the and you can maybe see that on all the weights we have countermarks here and here as well that show that the weights were double checked during the night by magistrate, of course. We have also astragali in Locus for basically the same denomination as in Athens. Another very interesting weight from the Geneva Museum is unpublished. It probably comes from Asia Minor, and you can see astragalus used here as a symbol of marine. We have the legend of the Astynomos Bacchus, son of Pyrrhias, and Na. And other examples from the Antiquity trade, so not clear, but probably from either Asia Minor or the Levantine area. Two astragali and yeah, on the right, I'm not so sure, could be one astragalus as well. The important thing is to notice that this one is weighs twice this one, so 2 astragalus is the double of just 1 astragalus, and you have the same pattern here, where 1 astragalus is for the main denomination, we have the double with 2 astragali and half an astragalus for half the denomination, the main denomination. So it's something we can find elsewhere, including in Athens with other symbols. And a few more examples. On the bottom, we have little ways that are identified, but on the top of the slide, you can see 2 ways with the letter kappa and epsilon that can be ways from female to for the investigation. And my 4th and last category is about astragali that are used not as weight symbol but as monetary symbol. And here I won't say a word about the case, the few cases where astragalus on a coin can be connected to, for instance, in the record we have many examples from Cyprus, from Cilicia, Pamphylia, Pisidia, Lycia, and Santa Macedonia, and which are shown already studied them, so I don't need to come back to them right now. I will rather focus on cases where astragalus is a monetary symbol closely linked to a weight standard. And again, it is the case in Athens, where astragalus is used as a symbol for the first weapon. Of course, not the old weapon, but that is one series of this weapon. And here it's pretty clear, so the real size, of course, is this one. You can compare it to the weight. The weapon are derived, that is, starters. They are actually silver starters. And it's quite clear that the silver starters has the same value as a bronze starter. So the big one in bronze, you can see it's normally about a bit easier, but let's say here 783 grams equals the little one in silver, and the ratio between bronze and silver at the end of the arcade period is about 100 to 1, so it works pretty well. In Italy, astragalus is also used as a symbol of the unicas on several series of ice gravity. So the unicas is also a very important relation in the Roman system, about 27 gravities. So that's it with my little corpus, and as I said, it's still going on research. But I'd like to come back to my this slide. It's pretty obvious why dice are connected to the bows, just because of the shape, and it can be used as that. But what is not obvious at all, I mean, but not obvious to me, maybe it's for you, but it's a connection between bones and weights. And to explain that, I'd like to have a look first on this fragment from Tour-de-Peilz, who is describing Britain, and especially the team production in Britain. So I quote, "The inhabitants of Britain who dwell about the country known as Valerian, it is Cornwall, are especially hospitable to strangers and have adopted a civilized manner of life because of their intercourse with merchants of other peoples. They live who wore the team, treating the bed which bears it in an ingenious manner. This bed, being like work, contains earthy sinks, and in them the workers quarry ore, which they then melt down and cleanse of its impurities. Then they strike it into the shape of knuckle bones and convey it to nylon, which lies off with them, and is called ictus. For at the time of ebb tide, the space between this island and the mainland becomes dry, and they can take the thing in large quantities over to the island on their wagons." So we have at least one literary attestation of the production of traditional ingots of tin in the shape of astragal. And it's linked in a way to my first slide, where we could see that the bone astragali could be also mixed with metal, especially with lead. So the other example, of course, that immediately comes to mind are the Bronze Age oxide shaped ingots. That is the usual way to produce, store, and export copper ingots during the second millennium BCE, at least the second half of the second millennium BCE. So we could try reconstruction if it was traditional to produce metal ingots in the shape of astragal, as it was traditional to produce ox-shaped ingots. We could imagine that at one stage it was easier, normal to start producing standardized ingots that are based on a metallurgical scale. For instance, you have one ingot weighing something, and then other ingots weighing twice or four times, six times, 12. The weight is easier to store them and exchange them. And the next step, of course, is that metal astragali can become a standard of value when you know the scale, you know that this astragalus is equals to 2 or 3 other astragali, and then you have a standard of values, and then you come to bronze astragali, for instance, that are used as traditional offering, the 6th century astragalus from Ionia, or the 5th century astragali from Armenia. But we could go a bit further with this fragment from Diogenes the Cynic, who says that Diogenes in his Politeia ordains by law the Moteteo that knuckle bones are to be the currency in the numisma. So this fragment is very interesting, very difficult to deal with as well. We know by another source that Chrysippus, the Stoic, on the 3rd century BC, agreed with that proposal from Diogenes. So there are basically two possibilities. Either Diogenes wanted to replace the numisma, the coins of the city, with just getting pieces, just a crazy attitude, or it could be something more deeper, more important. And if you consider that in the biography of Diogenes by Diogenes Sallustius, it is said that Diogenes was exiled from Sinope because he or his father actually adulterated the coinage, the numisma, and they did so because of a misunderstanding of an oracle from Apollo, saying that Diogenes was allowed to correct the political numisma. And of course there is a wordplay here, because it's not about the real coins, the currency of the city, but it's about the normal, the conventions of the city. And at the end of his biography, Diogenes adds that, so the Diogenes Laertius, as a Diogenes assigned to the Cynic, acted accordingly, adulterating the currency, the numisma in very truth, allowing convention, nomos, no such authority as the allowing to natural right, kataphysin. So what that means is that in his mind, in Diogenes' mind, the most important are the natural convention than the human conventions. And in this way, we could suggest that his proposal to replace the numisma by the knuckle bones, the astragali, is based on the concept that astragali are more natural to be used as standard of value than random silver or bronze coins. Then, going back to this reconstruction, when astrolabe are used as standards of value, they can easily become standards of weight. Because a standard of value is always linked to a specific metal, of course. You can only compare bronze ingots with other bronze ingots. But if you want a standard of weight, it's regardless of the material you use. You can have weights made of bronze, of course, but also of lead, of stone, of anyway, and you still use the same denominations. And they come with the first, with the logical development with the astragalus shaped weights, and with astragalus as a weight symbol. And the presence of astragalus on coins can be also explained by the role of astragalus as a standard of value, of course, and as a standard of weight. So, maybe you will think I've been too far and probably too far away from the game context. So why was I invited here? Maybe I will try to gain my dinner. I'd like to come back to this wonderful painting of Ezekias with Achilles and Ajax playing together. And also to the marvelous passage that Mark showed us yesterday. And I'd like just to go again in it if you want. And it's my last slide. So, it's the very first attestation of the Knucklebones games, of course, in Greek literature. And you know the context, it's the ghost of Patroclus who appears to Achilles, and it's marvelous. He asks him to be buried, and at the end to be buried with Achilles. So, lay not my bone apart from yours, Achilles, but let them lie together, just as we were reared in your halls when Menelaus brought me, still a little lad from Orpheus to your country, because of grievous manslaying, on the day I slew on Philamus' son, fool that I was, but I willed not, angered over Astragalus. Then the horseman Peleus received me in his house and wheeled me with tiny care, and made me your attendant. So too, let one coffer unfold your bones, a golden coffer with two handles, the one the Queen Mother gave you. So I'd like first to stress two things. First, in Homeric epics, actually Astragalus does not refer to the ankle bones, but to the cervical vertebra. And we have two examples, one in the Iliad and the other in Odyssey, where a warrior died because his astragalus was broken. So it's really, let's say, a vital bone. And I can't help but notice that in this passage, astragalus are just in the middle of the double allusion to the mixed bones of Achilles and Patroclus. There are also the presence on line 90 of the word terracon, which is a very ancient word, probably linked to the Hittite Tarpali, which signifies that Patroclus is a substitute for Achilles, and the whole passage really shows that the fates of Achilles and Patroclus are really mixed, just as their bones will be finally mixed in the same coffer. So, if there is this real identification mixing of Achilles and Patroclus, we could argue that nationally, the holos of Patroclus is similar to the menace of Achilles, which is the subject of the Iliad itself. And so here's the question: why is he so angered? Is it just about the child game, or could we imagine something more important? So if astrology are strongly connected to the notion of wealth and status, as I tried to demonstrate it, the child who wins actually becomes richer, and the one who loses actually becomes poorer. So any unfair trick from the playmate during the game could cause Patroclus' defeat and the subsequent anger. Just as the unfair attitude of the great king Agamemnon caused in Iliad 1 Achilles' anger, and I must remind you that without Athena, in Iliad the first book of Iliad, without Athena, Achilles would have killed Agamemnon just as Patroclus killed his playmate. So this passage would make more sense if the knucklebones game was not just a game, but was a contest for status, just as the numerous base paintings with two warriors playing together tends to show. So in this case, astrology will be the symbol of a social status. The more you get, the more important you are. If so, I hope my contribution to this conference was not so useless, but made it possible to add one additional meaning to the already polysemous word astrology. Thank you.
Merci à Charles. Je crois que vous avez tout à fait mérité votre part. S'il y a des questions au cours de cette intervention, des remarques aussi, en particulier sur cette relation avec le texte d'Homère.
I have
a question. So I wonder if you have considered the provenance of this astragalus-shaped finds, the one that you showed at the beginning of the presentation.
Yeah, I try to, but as I said, it's very difficult because in many places. So this one, right? No. Let's see here.
Yes.
Yeah, in many places we don't have any.
Yes. So you didn't find any information about the context of this?
It should be a broader research, because as you know, a lot of material is not published, and when it's published, it's quite difficult to find sometimes. So far, I have about 50 meta-astrology, and I must say I was most explored them in order to describe them. But for sure, we should go further and try to see if we have a context. I know that we can find, sometimes it's in a funerary context, you can find astrologists. Astrology, including meta-astrology as well. I think a few examples in...
also in domestic context and in centuries.
So, and probably it could help to explain, to give the significance of the object. Are they those, is it possible? Artifact guys, offering.
Thank you. And the other one is a comment. Just to enrich your collection, I don't know if you know that there are special artifacts replicating worker bones. So not only the natural shape of the bones in metal, but also worker bones.
Okay.
It is interesting, I think.
Yeah, sure.
Can I show you something?
Yeah.
There's a collector here in Switzerland, in Louvain, who also owns a castle in France, where he presents his game collection. And he recently he bought a set of knucklebones. He is convinced that it is a set weights.
Yeah, obviously they don't take the same permanence, and you just said that was made by the merchant, I guess, but on the principle, I won't say it's impossible. But the thing is,
especially since they look really as if they came from the same.
Yeah, the three members. So what we need here is, of course, a metallurgical complex that could, or inscriptions or countermarks that could show that these artifacts were used as ways and checked by authorities. But the question is possible.
Yes, thank you. I found very convincing your interpretations of the two literary texts, and I'm in support of that. I think the Diogenes text you can put in the dossier, or the anecdotes in which he opposes Alexander and the kings and so on, because of course usual coins are catanomon with the faces of Alexander, so to go to this natural bones would be Teraphysin. And for the Patroclus passage, I think you can put also in the dossier the etymological meaning of nepios. Nepios ephelon says, I didn't want to, and according to this monography on nepios, the original says is unable to calculate, unable to count. So if that's so, it adds to this numerical value of the astragaloi. Either because he was unable to count the value of the astragaloi, or because he killed the other guy with an astragalus. It's the typical anecdote of Heracles being too strong and unable to control his strength. He killed his teacher Linus with a lion. Right? So it's the typical anecdote of the heroic temper. And these nepios there is very etymological.
Il y a un texte d'Aristote, je ne sais pas si vous le connaissez, qui fait allusion justement au poids de l'astragale. Il dit l'astragale est une cheville sincère et une partie étrangère ajoutée aux deux parties du membre, et par le poids qu'il apporte, il rend la marche plus stable. Et il y a aussi un texte de Clémentien dans l'histoire naturelle, où il parle de l'astragale de l'œuf, et on met le feu pour soigner les dents, ébranler les douloureux. Donc je pense qu'il y a quelque chose vraiment, comme vous l'avez dit, avec la stabilité et puis le poids, la séquence, qui est vraiment articulé et qui se mélange finalement aux autres parties du membre. Donc manifestement, la dame a cette très particulier même par rapport aux autres.
Oui, effectivement, le François Popper dans son sens aussi, où il essaie d'un point de vue anthropologique de considérer l'astragale comme une culture. Il constate que c'est très souvent une relation avec le poids, l'aspect pesant. Autre chose, toujours chez Aristote, il y a un passage sur le mouvement, une question évidemment d'un astragale rempli, ils ont déformé avec le temps, ce qui influe sur sa manière de penser. Il y a environ une association du mot astragalos, dans la jeunesse, surtout d'un point de vue de la vie, que je ne sais pas si on a vu, mais qui
J'arrive notamment à une question psychologique de la forme. Cela doit suivre quand on fait l'astragalos, si on parle de fragment titulaire. Est-ce que c'est la forme qui fait pour qu'on peut l'appeler de cette manière? Est-ce que cette notion de poids de l'astragale est extrêmement suffisamment ancienne pour pouvoir, dès le départ, lire l'article de ce
là, si on se réfère au Organised, c'est plutôt la forme, effectivement, parce que c'est relativement facile d'appeler des astragales avec un support qui permet ensuite la fonction du sable théorie, par exemple, quelque chose qui permet de fondre après des lingots, et par rapport des choses, des lingots vont être
format, c'est des travail aux élèves de la forme. Mais effectivement, de nouveau, ça mérite un avis.
D'autres questions, je remarque. Sinon, je laisse la parole à Véronique.
Je crois que, comme toujours, vous avez compris que c'est la visite, on veut seulement récréation de votre part, jusqu'à